I'm going to just show us a little bit of a little dancey dance just to get us into the session, and I'll explain why at some point. And if I don't, be like, hey, you forgot. Okay, so I'll get you to stand up. It will be relevant, I promise. So this is the rhythm that I'm going to teach you. You're going to step on your left, 1, on your right, 2, 3. Oh, let me stand here. So you couldn't see my, okay. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Good. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. That's the rhythm we're working with. I'm holding a mic, so I can't teach you both arms. But with that, we're gonna, so out and in. Out. It's hard. We'll just stick to the legs. I can't, it's the mic. All right, yes. So we're gonna have a bit of music. So work with me. 1, 2, 3, and go. Left. Perfect. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to take it round. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. You can move with it. Feel free to turn around. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, last one I'm going to teach you. You go right, left, wrap it, up and down. This is a secret I'm teaching you. Right, left, wrap it up and down. Last time. Right, left, wrap it up and back. Groove, 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 groove. All right, well done. Last time, we'll go together. Go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Ah, you're dancing. Perfect. All right, thank you so much. We'll come down with the volume and you can have a seat. Clap for yourselves. That was beautiful. That was just beautiful. Just beautiful. Thank you so much. My name is Effie Nkrumah. I'm here via Stage a Change. Little bit about Effie. I'm Ghanaian, Akan Fanti to be specific. We'll get into that later as well. How do I get to Stage a Change? I am an actor, writer, performer, the multi-hyphenate of multi-hyphenates. But I'm also very short, dark-skinned, and of skilled migrant background and student background. My dad came here as a student, which means my story is less important, apparently. So I have to advocate for my community through the work I do. I left the country for 10 years to work in the field in Ghana and came back to find a space that was changing, but really not deeply. So here we are, we're going to talk about how brave can you be, inclusion beyond tokenism. So I'm absolutely going to try and get us to have conversation. I don't want to talk too much, but I do have a lot to share because it's not every day a Ghanaian woman gets to stand up and share her thoughts. So I'm going to try. Can we ask ourselves that question? Just call it out. How brave can I be? Go. Now really ask yourself that question. One more time. Oh, I love technology. All right, well, Stage a Change was founded by Cecily Stovall. I'm sure some of you have met her. Amazing person who came here with the Book of Mormon back in the day and was like, how come y'all are getting African Americans out here? Where are the black people? And so through that, she started Stage a Change. We say we're changing the face of theatre, but we're also looking at it in a bigger sense, the arts in general, film, television, because we're all interconnected. So, before we get into the actual meat of today, I want us to make 4 agreements. After I go through them, if you could just give me a thumbs up and we know we're good to go. The first one is we're going to assume the best of each other. I'd love for you to assume the best of me, even when I'm saying things that don't sound so nice. I'm going to ask you to be patient with me as I try to wrap my head around thoughts and years of history and experiences and try to be as eloquent as I can for your sake. Conscious communication. I'm going to feel free to speak in draft, work through my thoughts, and I expect that you would expect the same of yourself. Feel free. And the last one is to displace fear. I ain't here to scare anybody, but there might be some scary things. And so if that's the case, let's try to remember that we're here for a bigger purpose. bigger picture. And so let's just displace any fear, whatever that may be, however it chooses to manifest. Fear be gone. All right, so if we're all okay with that, I'm asking you for that for me, but I'm also asking the same of you. Can I get a thumbs up? Oh, you guys. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the abide principle. And as much as I appreciate that being down there would probably look less colonial, I'm really short, so I'm going to be here. And sitting down, I'm super insecure about my tummy spilling over my thighs, so I'm going to stand up, okay? Transparency. So, abide. This is the framework that we work with at Stage of Change. And I'm going to rush through it because I want to get into the meat of the actual question. How do we get inclusivity beyond tokenism in the next 100 years? So if I'm going too fast, please just be like, yo, feel free. Let's practice it. Yo, slow down. Feel free. I might not listen to you, but whatever. Okay. So access, belonging, inclusion, diversity, engagement, and equity. We've heard these words over and over again. So I'm just going to run us through our definitions simply because I don't think you all need to go through your own right now. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think you know. So this is how we define access. The removal of barriers for participation based on human ability or experience to the fullest extent possible. So it's something that already exists. It's a space, a place where it exists. We're removing it. That's what's granting us the access. Belonging. Each person is recognized and valued for the unique identity and perspective they bring. The need to engage in covering isn't present. Now, I'll be honest, there are things that I will be covering about myself today, things about my identity that I don't necessarily feel safe unpacking here. We spoke about backpacks. That's something we do at Stage of Change. What's in your backpack? What do you identify with? How do you identify? And in a space where you know you can unpack everything, that's a space where you belong. Inclusion. This is the intentional practice of ensuring that people of all backgrounds can fully participate in all aspects. So if we've got a space where you can come in, but you can't walk into that room, you can't be in this meeting, etc. That's inclusion is where we say, come in. Again, removing the barriers. And diversity, it's a big word. We say it every day. It's a state of being. It's the presence of difference. It's the intersection of different identities, ideas, and ideals. So it's really about everything coming together at the same time with all the other things in place that makes a space actually diverse. Equity, we know what that is. Ongoing implementation of fair policies and procedures to ensure equal outcomes for all without exclusion based on the diversity. Engagement. The link between purpose and practice. It's truthful. The purpose and the practice link up. Individuals feel psychological meaningfulness, safety, and availability to truly participate, as opposed to sitting in the room and watching. Great. So we've run through that. I know I've been quick. Please feel free to jot down where you want us to go back or talk about something. I'm trying to get through it so that we can talk. Beautiful. Oh, yeah, and it moves. Tokenism. Now, I know I went quickly to it, and then I had the definition, but I actually wanted to ask you, please yell out what you feel tokenism is. We'll go really quickly. Anyone, just yell it out. When you don't really feel it. Ticking a box. A cherry on top. Surface level. Mate! Okay, well, let's go into it. Oh, we're moving again. The policy or practice of making only a symbolic effort. So that's it. It's the icing on the cake. It's the little pretty part. I've forgotten what you said now. When you don't feel it. So it doesn't resonate. You know something's tokenistic immediately. I always say the visceral is real. If you feel it, then you're like, oh, I know, it's probably true. So, story time. Woohoo! So back in 2012, I was auditioning for a role on The Great Gatsby. Now, Uncle Baz had asked all, all agents to send Ghanaian or Nigerian extras, actors, performers. Why did he ask that? The Great Gatsby set in the 20s in New York and other rich places, and he needed people that looked like or were close to ethnically African American people. So I walk into the room, and my audition brief was African American dancing couple. I walked in and I was like, oh, so sorry, I think I'm in the wrong room. And they said, no, what are you here for? And I said, African American dancing couple. And they're like, no, this is the right room. And when I tell you that I was one, the darkest, two, one of two black women in the room, I mean, it's the truth of the matter. We had people from Guadeloupe, not Afro-descendant, but from Guadeloupe. People from Vietnam, Philippines, Pakistan, and India in the room. Why? Because the assumption was once there's melanin, it's black. So those people were in the room auditioning to play an African-American dancing couple. Now, this is where I go into double consciousness, if you read Marcus Garvey. Did I actually get cast in that role because I was the only dark-skinned person? Was I cast in that role because I was good at the audition? Or was it because there was no one else available? It shocked me to my core, but it also made evident that people on the level of casting and agents, right up to those spaces, are not reading and learning about the world we live in historically. So I'll explain why I mentioned that. What are the assumptions we have about each other, and what do we stand to gain from reading up? So my answer to that is we have to be brave enough to seek clear understanding, to read, and to seek genuine audience engagement, which comes through genuine casting processes. Now, I'm running around in these areas, say, because I am an actor first and foremost, but I want to make it clear that I'm coming from that point because it's the last thing we see, right? We as the audience. The last thing we see is the final output, but all the stuff goes down to the bottom. Okay, so different. Let's talk about different. I know you saw it, but I'm still going to ask. Your definitions of different. Let's hear it. Yeah. Yeah, let's go with that. Not like me. So, absolutely, partly or totally unlike in nature, form, or quality. Story time! And of course, if I'm going too fast, if it's not interesting, just let me know. We'll move on to the next bit. So, I've got lots of stories. Script reading with a diverse cast. I have asked permission of the director of this to share this story, so don't worry. It could be hot goss, but it's not. So I recently was in a room for a play and analysis and reading. Now, the play was set in 90s rural New South Wales. New South Wales, rural, in the 90s. And I look around the table. There's me. Two women who identify as Asian background, and a whole host of other diverse identities and ethnic backgrounds. And I thought, okay, where's this going? We start reading the play, and I think, I don't know why Effie, as a Ghanaian, Fanti, black woman, would be sitting reading a role of a play that's set in the rural New South Wales in the 90s. Doesn't make sense, does it? So I asked the director when they asked us to field questions, I was like, I don't think this makes sense right now. And why? We're running away from the idea that specificity isn't important. We're running away from it because of all the structures of whiteness as an institution, not whiteness as white people, has done. So people are afraid to cast all white. People are afraid to say this is a story that's historically set in an all-white community. But what that does is change how the story not only is told, but what it means to an audience. And it discounts the fact that audiences who are not white cannot identify with any of the themes in it, right? So let's put these people in, and somehow everyone will rock up at the theatre and they'll love the show and they'll all get it. But the true meaning and historical impact of the show has changed. Because now you've got to explain why each of us is there and how we got there. How are you going to do that in an hour and a half? It's not really possible. So that's where I go to the next thing. We've got to be brave enough to demand and expect attention to detail and specificity, as opposed to running away from it in the name of achieving diversity. I hope it's making sense. Please feel free to say yes, no. Thank you. So specificity grants universality. Now, many people, myself and a few others, are really arguing about who came up with this nice little sentence. We don't know yet, and if you find the scholar, let us know. But until then, we've all been thinking it and saying it, and it's something that we hope comes into our local discourse. Specificity grants universality. Don't run away from it. That takes us to this next one, mainstream. I won't make you talk. Having, reflecting, or being compatible with the prevailing attitudes and values of a society or group. The mainstream that we think is the mainstream isn't, right? We say mainstream is white. We say it, and we all kind of like to feel the icky feelings around that. But when we really look at what people are doing, buying, saying, thinking, listening to, it doesn't always reflect that, does it? So sometimes it's about turning back and saying, what exactly is our mainstream? How can we be able to be brave enough to redefine what the mainstream is in order to achieve places and spaces, shows and theatres that are inclusive beyond tokenism? It's a redefinition. It's the last story, I promise. So I recently worked with an institution as a community engagement consultant or lead or officer. There are so many other words. And one of the things that we engage on is food. Food speaks volumes. It's what your grandmother made, your sister, etc. And I presented a menu of options and immediately was told, oh no, it's too hard. And I said, why? Oh, well, because those are chips. We don't know where we're going to get those. And I said, okay, well, actually, that's a drink. It's not a packet of chips. And you can get that at any local store where you ask. And I said, did you ask? And that's our biggest issue. No one's asking. No one's saying, oh, it's too hard, it's inaccessible, we can't get it. If you walk down the road, get on the train, 2 stops over, it's right there. But we're too afraid to ask. And so if you don't know, you can't get the answer. So what do we have to do with that? We've got to challenge it, and we've got to change it. This automatically grants everything in the Abide framework. Belonging, access, inclusivity, because it's diverse, equals engagement and equity. I've gone real fast. Now, how do we get there, Effie? I'm proposing to all of you today, and I'm proposing it because I want you to think through and help me, because that's what we're here to do, is that we need to work with a framework that abides in specificity by constantly and consistently looking back. We've had talks all through the week that talk about ancestry. How do we be better ancestors? How do we look forward? My culture says we go forward by looking back. Now, has anyone seen this beautifully screenshotted symbol before? Yes, who said yeah? Ah, cool, what is it? Beautiful. Okay, so Sankofa. If I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to move to the next one. Does this look more familiar to anybody? More familiar? Okay, so I'll tell you what it is. Sankofa is actually an Akan term. Now, if you Google it today, it's going to say a lot of incorrect things. It'll say it's a Akan tribal symbol, and I'm going to be clear with all of us today so that it'll help everyone. The Akans are an ethnic group, and we are a nation with various dialects and languages under it. Akans have put their culture out into the world for hundreds of years. Sometimes it was by choice, and sometimes it was by force. through our gold that went into all of the UK, etc., through our bodies that went into the Caribbean, into the Americas, and through our songs and languages. If you've ever heard the song that goes, everybody do what you're doing, a smile will wake your sunshine day. That's by Osibisa, who went out into the UK with their music. Ghanaians and Akan specifically have put cultural production for ages. Now, what else we do is speak in proverbs. Our parents are always speaking to us in proverbs. It's never straight. So this proverb that has been made into a symbol called Sankofa has a bird with an egg that they've turned back to get. And it says, "Se wo refri na wo Sankofa yentri," which means if you forget something, it's totally acceptable to go back and get it. It's not an abomination to say, "I forgot that," and go get it. Which to us says, ancient wisdom is powerful. Ancient wisdom is how we move forward. You don't know how to do it, ask your grandmother, ask your grandfather. But if you're like those of us who went into diaspora and so on, or through other forms of colonialization that were happening at the same time, don't have that access, find the way. So, using the Sankofa idea, I'm going to propose these to all of us today. That we investigate, that we triangulate, that we situate, that we speculate, and then presentate. I know presentate's not a real word. I worked at Payless Shoes for 5 long years, and presentate is the word they use for how the shoe looks in the box when you go up to the... So, yeah, you know, the left shoe faces that way, the right shoe faces that. Presentate the aisle. So anytime you walk into a Spenless Shoes and you see it, you know they've presentated. So, can I move on? Are we good? Great. So, why do I say all this? One, it's easy. Oh, go, yes.
Can you explain what triangulating
Yes,
is?
I will, right now. No, don't apologize. So, I'm going to go through why I say these. Part of it is because I wanted to see if I was really a poet. And the other part was to see how I could make it easy and accessible for us to remember these things on a daily as we approach casting, programming, auditioning, if there are any actors in here or listening, how we approach auditioning, how we approach receiving a brief that makes us go, this is what I think might work. Investigate. Find a starting point in Google. Okay, so the name of the character, I'm not sure about that. Don't know where it is. Google it. From there, triangulate. So triangulate for me is a simple thing of, it's almost dramaturgical if you will, but what was happening at the time of the story, what was happening in another place at the same time, and what was happening here in Australia at the same time. And you're going to look at that in different ways. It's historical, but you're going to go location. Okay, they mentioned this particular brand of sugar. Okay, I'm going to search the brand. Oh, that takes me to Jamaica, Guyana, Suriname. That takes me back to West Africa, Guinea, Ghana, Benin, Dahomey. That's triangulating. I encourage you to go down the rabbit hole. I go down the rabbit hole all the time, and the things that you find that are right there will blow your mind. And what that does, it opens you up to going, oh my gosh, this is an answer to 5 questions I've been wondering about. That song, that outfit, that movie, it's right here. So that's what triangulation is. It's matching up points in time and history to see how people were affected by the same thing. So we use it a lot in the art world. There's an amazing artist, for those of you who like visual art, called Beatrice Glow. And she looks at forts. Specifically, her work is around Pacific and Asian history. And she looks at forts that existed in, let's say, the Banda Islands, which is part of the nutmeg and the spice roots, and how you can find the same fort, the blueprint, the same build architecture in New York at the top of Wall Street. That's already our connection to Dutch trade routes. And how we can find that same fort in Ghana. So we're looking at movement of spice, body, and we're looking at who loses land and when and how. Triangulation. Next, situate. This is the hard one. Where would I or my ancestors have been? What would we have been doing? Like, really? What would we have been doing at that point in time? And what does that mean in relation to my relationship to this work that's been presented, this brief that's been presented? Where would we be? Now, Effie, I know I have two options. I'm Fanti, which means I'm from the coast of Ghana. So, my ancestors at any one point in time would have either been taken as slaves at one point or would have been trading in slaves at one point. They would have been friends with the Portuguese, and then when the Portuguese left after teaching us how to make floury pan or bread, we would have then had to deal with the Dutch for 267 years. And then after the Dutch left, we'll deal with now the British come in because everyone's leftovers went to the Brits, right? So I can answer more than 100 questions about any role based on just those 2 points of my own history. And if I want to go further back, I look up into the continent, Mali, what was formerly Sudan, and I go all the way down. Okay, so I'm triangulating and I'm situating, which means now if you give me a role for a character in Southern Africa, I'm going to think twice, aren't I? I'm going to ask myself, why should I play it over someone who's actually from that space and carries the history in their body and their mind? Because specificity is what grants universality. What does a barrel of nutmeg have to do with New York, the annihilation of the Banda people, and why does the line, I was in Africa, even matter? I digress. So, the next one is speculate. Does this work, my part in it, erase, potentially erase? Whose story is this to actually tell? Does it disregard or change what we know now? How will this impact the future, the next 100 years? And is that wise? We know that we're living in a space where social amnesia or historical amnesia was part of the system to sustain us. It was part of the system to keep the roads tarred over the dirt roads. It's what told us that tar is better than dirt, right? It's what told us that buildings that go up that don't sustain us are better than the land. It's part of the process that makes us forget. And so many of us have been taught to forget for so long that we don't even know how to find the access points to what we were. But every single one of us has more than one indigenous culture running through our veins. But we use the word indigenous in a way that discounts and erases the ones that existed. The Celts, the Normans, the Vikings. Do you see where I'm going? Those things have been removed and erased, and so people feel like they haven't got anything of their own to go back to, but they do. So, if we say we want inclusion, and we don't want to erase anymore, then we've got to ask ourselves, how do we ensure the erasure doesn't happen in order to give the specificity to make sure everyone's stories can be told? And everyone's stories at any one time in the year or the programming system is specific enough for everyone to enjoy it. Because what we're told is if it's black people come. If it's Asian people come. If it's white people come. And right now it's only white people. But no, it can be specific enough for everybody. So, is this wise is my last question in that section. Is it wise to decide to erase this bit of history for the sake of looking diverse in the outcome? What will that mean in 100 years? Will our forebears and descendants be standing here again asking the same question? Or will they be saying, thank God that question was answered? I'm going to tell you another story. It's about Bekbele, which if anyone Ga in the next 100 years ever watches this, forgive me. Bekbele is a food made in Accra, which is also on the coast of Ghana. So I told you what the Fantis, who we met with. The Gans are an hour and a half up the coast. Accra is the capital, and they had the Danish, mainly, from the 1500s right through till the British. So they have Danish names, Danish castles, etc. And apart from the Danish, we were, of course, empirical in our own ways. We were colonizing our own ways. So people were battling, different ethnic groups, when the Gold Coast was called the Gold Coast. And the Ashantis, who are in the hinterland in the middle of the country, that's now Ghana, who are also Akan people, and the most visible, I would say, for Ghanaian culture, if you've ever heard of kente cloth and all those things, it's the Ashantis. And they were fighting down the country, slowly annihilating different groups. And then the guys on the coast here, the Ashantis, are coming. So what do? They're like, how can we fight? How are we gonna fight these Ashanti people? So they decided that we're not gonna use machetes or our bare hands, even though we're strong. We're gonna attack them with food. They said, which food are we going to use? I said, nitakik, brother. Then they said, bekble. Why? Because if you don't cook it properly, you'll get bad diarrhea. And we know that in those days, this is I'm talking 15, 16, 1700s. There's no ORS, there's no Gatorade. If you get that kind of diarrhea, you're done. So they said, okay, tell the ladies to start preparing it. So they started preparing it, told the plan. And bekble is usually served during Homoa, which is a festival called Hooting at Hunger. So they said, this is what we're going to serve. So they're going to think there's a party. So they put out big pans of bekble in the forest. And our Ashanti brothers came. And they're very, very proud people. Look at this nonsense. We've come to fight them and take their land, and they've actually put food out. And they entered the place. I said, hey, okay. They started eating, and they enjoyed. And then one by one, they were falling down for their commander to say, okay, get out. And they retreated. And that is how Accra, or Nkrumah as we call it, saved themselves from actually being taken over by the Ashantis. It's a big, big win. Now, I've told you this story. If you were visiting Ghana, or my house maybe, and you wanted to eat bekble, would you eat it from someone who knows how to make it, or someone who learned how to make it on YouTube? There are productions right now that are being told by the wrong people. The ones who got it off YouTube. Even if the casting might be right, the director's not. The dramaturg's not. The designer isn't. So something doesn't sit right, doesn't feel right to you and to the audience who it's intended for. So we've got to move from the YouTube into the actual. Back to specificity, back to access, back to inclusion. I don't. So this takes us to our final piece, is presentate. Now, if you've been able to answer all the questions and you've triangulated and you've investigated and you've gone, the team's right, because I know that they get it. The casting's right, I know that they get it. The person in charge is right. Let's present the work. Let's program the work. If it's not, you can't shake your tail feather. Because someone will watch it. You'll probably sell out, as has happened. You'll sell out. But the people that you want to, the audiences you want to diversify, the people whose jobs are relying on your decision making, are still at the back going, what the heck? And I can't tell you how many movies, theater shows that come out where people are going, what the? You get the text messages, yo, why am I being invited to this show? Yo, who's black in this? Why did they? And it's literally like people's pain. I don't want to see the show just because you're, no. So you've got to get specific and you've got to be brave. This comes to my sort of last point in this bit. It really is about that, going back to that mainstream point and building an identity that goes 100 years into the future. We're at a time where we're trying to keep up with the UK and the America. Someone mentioned an amazing program in Denmark. But these are societies that have lived homogeneously for hundreds and hundreds of years. They were already old. They're the old world, right? We are in the new world, which means that we can't afford ourselves the same need to rush into work that they have had to deal with for hundreds of years. We've got to stop, take a minute, go back and rebuild a question of who and what makes an Australian. I know I could answer that perfectly with Nikki Webster when I was 11 and 12 years old. I could say Nikki Webster is an Australian. But I think I've allowed myself to think of myself as one as well. Because when I moved to Ghana for 10 years, I was reminded every day that I'm a tuntum brony, white, black woman. Because the way I think is Aussie. The way I speak is Aussie. The way I view the world, the bloody good work I make because I'm Aussie. But I make it that way because I'm Aussie and I can look back to my Ghanaian heritage and I can do all the things I've said to you and I can say this is a good work. We all have to be able to afford ourselves the same opportunity to do that and to say what is an Australia, what is an Australian. Decide it before we move ahead. And that's my point here. Once we know who we want to be, we then move with purpose. In Nam, on Wurundjeri land, what do we say when you come? Wominjeka, which I learned recently means you've come, but with what purpose? It's not just welcome, it's with what purpose. So if we do that, we move with purpose, we prioritize with specificity, and then our execution, what we take out into the world from here, is rooted in knowledge, and we escape the greedy hands of tokenism. Which tokenism is just about greed. Grab it, grab it, grab it. Bonus slide. That means that we are working in what I think, and again, I'm in discussion with you, I think, is a decolonized process. The system of whiteness, again, not white people, but whiteness, is about erasure for collective power. Let's forget that we're Celts, Saxons, Anglos. Let's come together, become this one thing, and that will move us forward in the world. And it's worked. But the assumption then is that everyone else wants the same thing. But no, everyone else wants self-determination. We just want to live. We don't want to rule or tell you what to do. We want to live. So, when you get specific, you honor voices that have long since been quieted. You consider each person able to tell their story, which is about trust. I trust that you can tell a story that will bring in the people that will help me mark the damn thing that says I got people in the room. You trust the audiences to get it. You're saying to the audience, it's not what you've been seeing. It's not a Mamma Mia, but it's going to be good. And you trust them to go, yeah, it was. And then you dispel the scarcity mentality, which is what so many of us are working with on all levels. We often say people of color, black people have this thing about scarcity. It's everyone. People are afraid of losing their jobs because there seems to only be one CEO position, etc. So we're decolonizing as we do this. And it's in a way that's not about dismantling and words that are so nice to say but are really unrealistic sometimes because you dismantle then to what? So you've got to work step by step. Which came back to that question, what are you scared of? And I find this is a good one to start with before you even go through the triangulation and all that. What am I afraid of? Am I afraid of someone else coming in and taking a job that I fought for? Am I afraid of someone else getting a role that I really want because I'm a hungry actor? Am I afraid of another director getting the props because they were damn good at directing a piece that they understood inside out, upside down? What am I scared of? Really? So I'm just going to leave these questions here for a second. I do really want you guys to, think through them, and then I'll wrap it up so that we can talk. Give you a couple of seconds. I won't sing because I don't want your ears to bleed. And of course, consider these through what we've spoken about. So I just want to go to the third question there. Do we quit or do we make room? And I mean this honestly. I think there's this thing of, you've all heard of white flight, right? When we had it, we see it all over when an area is now open, everyone white leaves. Yes? Have we? Oh, I'm sorry for assuming that. Okay, so it happens a lot in the United States, but I'll use a Ghanaian example. So there's an area called Kokomemle in Accra. Extremely affluent, huge big houses. Now, if you go into recent Ghanaian history, post-independence, it was for our ministers, heads of states, the president, etc. But the true history behind Kokomemle is that it was settled and built by British settlers who came to Ghana to live there. And they built huge, beautiful homes. But when Ghana got independence, they had what we call white flight, where everyone white packs their bags and goes, oh shit, and, and leaves for good. You see it in Zimbabwe. My family had friends who said, oh, the country's gone to the dogs, meaning the farms their grandparents had stolen were being taken back. So they left back to the UK and went into society. You saw it in post-apartheid South Africa, when people pack up and leave. If we're not careful and ask ourselves these questions, that's what may happen in our industry. People going, I'm so afraid of this thing called race and this thing called inclusion and diversity, and I'm going and leaving with all the skills that they have, with all the actual creative things and thoughts and good things they have to bring, they leave. And then what's left? Something that has to be rebuilt with half the country, and then the same thing happens. No. It's not about quitting. It's not about leaving. It's not about going and letting someone... That's the tokenism discussion. It's about making room as opposed to running away. Ancient wisdom is powerful. We all have to have less pride that we can figure it out ourselves and go back. Sankofa. It's not an abomination to turn around and pick it up. What are we at time-wise? Beaut. Well, I figured, I'll come back to that. Should we just chat amongst as a big group? I feel like sometimes that's nice. Or do you guys want to chat in little groups? What are we bored of? What do we want to do? Big? Big? Yay, you guys rock. Okay, well, I have a couple of sort of case studies. Let's do them together. Do we have a preference? Or should I just read one out? Okay, so we've got a script is presented to you. The story is set in the United States during the Jim Crow era. What's your process? Yo. Literally that. But that's a great question. We started with the words in the question. What was the Jim Crow era? Who was Jim Crow? Great. Any other thoughts? Yes.
I'd be asking, why in 2023 in Australia are we doing a show about the Jim Crow South in America?
I'm in tears. You can see the sweat. Exactly. That's exactly it. Why here? Why now? And I just want to pitch in there that there's something a lot of black actors are talking about now is, as a lot of African American work is brought in, the question we're feeling is that a lot of institutions need to stop, go back 3 years and put people into training and then come back and do it, rather than doing what they're doing, which is a lot of tokenistic casting. Anyone with melanin can get in there. Anyone with melanin that comes and says, I'm systemically, can we do this play that's about African Americans even though I'm not from an African or Afro-diasporic background? And then the institution goes, oh my God, yes, diversity, and programs it. And then the audience doesn't change. So perfect question. What's the era? Now I figured that out, why? And if there's a good answer, fine, fair. If you can cast it, fine, fair. But if you can't, put it on the back burner. There's always time to learn from the past. POC actor, passionate about visibility. Oh, no, we just talked about that. My bad. Oh, no, we didn't. POC actor, passionate about visibility for POC performers, comes to your organization with a script that plays about a black family, but there's no one Afro descent in the cast. What do we do?
Ask that actor if they know any writers from their community that we can develop the work on.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else?
Cast people of colour in specific people of colour roles.
Ooh, I like that. I like that. Did we all hear it though? Cast people of color actors, the people of color actors in the roles that aren't specifically black, right? Is that? Yep. Yeah. So give them other roles as opposed to the main ones. The last one I'll go to is a dance group wishes to present a show about racism using dancehall and reggaeton music. What questions do you want to ask them? Who's in your dance group? And if they say, well, we're really passionate, this is what we do, like, do you have anything that you'd then ask after that?
As is the answer, we're a bunch of passionate black
Well, okay, let's ask that. If they were passionate about dancehall and reggaeton and they were passionate about issues of race and how to address it, and they are all white, what do we say? Yeah, I think that's a good one that we often get is, are you the right one to tell this story? But then maybe another question would be, okay, I actually recognize the passion you have and I see what you're trying to do. Who are you partnering with? Whether that's organizationally, and we've spoken about extraction and all, so it's not about going to a community and saying, how do you, what are you? Oh, I took a trip to, but more about saying, okay, who can we actually collaborate with now? Can we get another group in there and sit down and have a conversation? And in fact, that brings in a whole new area of not just collaboration, but inclusion. Because then it says that the dialogue's open and it stands to make the work much more poignant and useful, more inclusive on all levels. Thanks for that. We done? Oh, yes. I apologize. I'm sorry. I was just looking at everyone and so excited. Okay, my man. Yes. Yes. Okay. Well, that was the end of the questions. Okay. Well, okay. So let's go to this more didactic AF questions to consider. I can't find culturally appropriate cast members. Do I? A, find an actor who really isn't it and should frankly know better and cast them? Do I B, ask why? Do I C, ask people from other communities that are close enough if they know someone? D, find another story to tell because if the right people aren't around, then maybe it isn't so important. Or E, find the right people, fund their training so we can do it when they're ready. There's no right answer. No jokes. I love that everyone said yes to the last one. Don't you think there's any merit though in, in asking why? Or D, find another story. Like maybe I feel like sometimes we feel like there's also a scarcity of stories. There are heaps of stories. Let's find another one that works for you. But I just wanted to call us to A as well. It's not just the organization's job to hold people accountable. Feel free, I feel, to hold your actors accountable as well. Hold them accountable to doing their own research as well, because they should be, especially if they're portraying anything that's cultural. They should be doing the research and asking themselves, is this the role for me? Because the way the world has worked, Black POC actors cannot assume that we work in the same frame as whiteness. I don't think we can assume that it's okay to play whatever, whenever, however, because of those specificities. Instead of calling my mate and say, how do I say this word in your language, knowing you're an actor, how about you go audition for this role? So we shouldn't have any fear in testing and pushing and challenging our actors to be better, because part of the reason that whole career path is not even always respected in certain cultural sectors is because there's an assumption that we're not thinking people, but we should be the most thinking people. Awesome. Well, that kind of brings me to the end. Oh, yeah, the real end. Thank you all so much for really hearing me out today. I genuinely appreciate it. Being able to speak my language here is a big deal, especially because I'm a child that couldn't. My alveolar ridge is so Aussie that I can't even pronounce the words really well. But I'm grateful for the opportunity to try and for all of your openness to hearing me out. I'm getting emotional, but I'm really grateful. So if there's any questions, I'm feeling free to answer. Yes.
So you said you left Australia because, yeah, it wasn't great, and then you came back in 10 years, it feels better, or on the way to being better. What did you need when you left that wasn't happening?
A chance. Sorry. Repeat the question. Thank you. The question was, I left for 10 years and came back to find things different. And so what did I need before I left that probably would have made me stay? I needed a chance. And I think a lot of people feel the same way. If you've been in a culture where you've had to convince your family that this career in the arts is worth it, and then you get to the point where you've graduated, and we all heard, was it Lakshmi? And it was interesting because I graduated from what's now WSU, University of Western Sydney, when I was there, Theatre Nepean, if anyone's familiar with it. And when I started my course, my second year, we found out that our course was being cut. And so by my third year, our playhouse, I don't know if anyone's been out to the Warrington Playhouse, but the stage was carpeted and all the audience seats had those little flippy tables because the university told us 250 paying med students over 55 actors pretending to be an egg. Who are you going to fund? But what it means is that the eggs who really had great ideas, and it's Western Sydney, so from day one we were told 2,000 people audition for NIDA, 20 people get in. What are your chances? 1%. You're on the other side of the bridge. You can't expect an agent to cast you, so you've got to make your work. You've got to make it. So we were makers who could do it all, and we were doing it all really well. But by the time we got to graduating, there was no chance because agents were not being called to see us. So you were starting with nothing, with a degree that meant very little, and a help debt that we're still paying. So, we needed a chance. We needed an agent or 3 or 4 to come out to Western Sydney. We needed people who were funding the work to look at it and go, I might not get it right now. I might not get it. But if this application's come through and is well written, maybe I should give it a chance. A lot of us had shows that were really good. I'm looking at Roz Oates, who was there from the beginning, saw comedy work that I'd done that just never got funded because we were in the rooms where they would say at SBS and places that were supposed to be for diverse people. Well, there are these 2 white guys who have 1 million followers on YouTube because they're really funny. And you guys have a show that you did out at Bankstown that you went really well, but unless you make a YouTube channel and get 1 million followers, we're not sure. And that was the language. So we needed a chance, an honest, genuine chance. And yes, it's changing, but now I'm seeing that if we don't do the deep work now, it won't be much of a difference. You can't train a black person to be a white rep, if that makes sense. And that's what we've got to be careful of. Ross? Oh. Yeah. Yes, so Roz said, I don't want my head. Roz said the show was really great, and it was a bit of a missed opportunity for the channels that didn't take us on.
And the thing about the SBS execs, in case they're watching.
And if you're watching and you're an SBS exec, but I should say that the fallout of that is a lot of people leaving the country. My comedy partner has now lived in Singapore for 8 years and is in advertising. So people have left the arts because of it. So Lakshmi's plea today has been repeated through the week, because I think people are feeling there's no access to actually being heard in that way. And I will share that, I'm one of a few black artists who've put pictures in the last 6 months that have been turned away. And I don't think it's because our work's not good. For some of us, we've got heavy international arts makers who have written letters of support. We've got footage. We've been making and doing the work. But someone somewhere's got to be ready to say, I'm going to give a chance, even if I don't know where the audiences are coming for. Because the people, we live in the country, we're there. So a chance, yeah. Any other? Yes. Is there an instance where tokenism can lead to a positive outcome? Thinking about The Little Mermaid. Do you want to... Can tokenism increase visibility? Yeah. Is that... Yeah.
So like the Little Mermaid in the original cartoon, Ariel was white.
Yes.
Then they renamed it Black Actress.
Okay.
People were really happy about that, and then a lot of people felt that it was very good.
Yes. So people felt it was tokenistic, and then some people were happy because it was representative of historically underrepresented faces. I think that what I probably should have said at the top was I apply most of this to work that is non-fictional, if that makes sense. If it's a story about a time in history, that must be applied. If it's a story that can be anything, Avatar, The Little Mermaid, Cinderella, that's not necessarily rooted in historical fact or doesn't refer to historical fact, then I think that in a sense, yes. In a sense, yes. However, I don't think that taking something and just changing it is enough, because I don't know if it was. And, don't cancel or quote me on this and don't put it on the socials, but, why not just write another, look for folklore that exists that, that's my question. It's cute, it's nice, I get it, but it's that thing of replacing one for another, and I don't know, I think in some ways it just alienated instead of actually granting access and inclusion. So, yeah, I would question it.
Do you agree? Like, one show that's like probably popular right now is Miss Saigon. Because, well, I want to hear from Nicole as well, but like for Asian community, this is like a show like that has platformed a lot of Asian artists as a general concept, even though it's written by two white guys and it's about a cultural experience that they never heard of, they took from Madame Butterfly, but it still provided opportunities for a lot of Asian actors to actually work, get paid for their work, have longevity of their work because it's a long touring season, and then but they're not playing the content that they're representing. And I probably feel that now it would definitely not get funded this year. But what is like that the notion of complexity of life? That was like that's a tokenistic show.
Yeah.
But that gave a lot of passion to a lot of like Asian artists, like Leah.
So Miss Saigon as a show was tokenistic. The casting has been tokenistic. I'm just trying to paraphrase it. And so what are the thoughts on that show, and would it still be funded today? And that's with the idea that it's already given so many Asian actors of different Asian backgrounds, whether they were actually Vietnamese or not, right? A job and access into the industry. Did you want to speak on that, Nick? I mean, not. No, I'm so sorry. I was looking at the wrong Steph. I was looking at Steph. I'm sorry. I think that's a hard question for me to answer, because there's me as Effie as at Stage of Change, and then there's Effie as Effie. And I do think that the question for me is, what do we then do with that? So if I've been cast in a tokenistic way, and I know that, what do I do with that? Do I say that all the time when I'm interviewed? Do I say, you know what, I really wish that this was actually a Vietnamese actor, but I'm grateful that I've gotten the opportunity because now I can talk about it, and we need more work for Vietnamese actors, or we need more training for Asian backgrounds that are not represented in the industry. Or maybe I'm Philo. I really wish someone wrote a movie or a play or a musical for a Filipino lead. You know, that's what I think. So I feel like if you've gotten the opportunity and there is no one else and that's what you want to do, fine. But I also think we aren't islands, especially as POCs. We're not islands. There are people who can move as if they're on their own, but then there always comes a point in the career where a show or something comes and they've got to turn back and go, where are my people? And they're not there. So I think if you're someone who's a conscious actor, performer, and you've got the role and you're working, find ways of opening the door for other people as well. Yeah. Ah. So this is an opinion that The Little Mermaid wasn't tokenistic, but was actually researched and reflected each of the daughters of the seven seas and the background, ethnic background that they actually would have had for the seas that they were in. I mean, yeah, that's a fair point. And I mean, interestingly, of all the mermaids that spoke, it was only 3 out of the 7 that actually had speaking roles as well. The rest were just nodding or in the background. So that's something to also look at. Wasn't tokenistic, but then was it now? What else was it saying? Who had voice in it, etc. Cool. I think we're done. Again, thank you. I really hope it was useful. I really do.